o'clock.
6 o'clock. Ooh. Piece of roofing tile, is that what I'm supposed to hit? Okay. I'd like to call this evening our meeting to order here for the Cadillac Planning Commission here, 6 o'clock on Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. Starting with that, so if I could have everyone join me for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do roll call, please, Danielle.
Filkins.
Here.
Host.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Bunce.
Here.
Bosher.
Yes, here.
Bauman.
Here.
Bent.
Here.
Putvin.
Here. Thank you. So this evening, approval of our agenda here for February 28th, again, 2024.
So moved.
Seconded.
One of you two, okay.
Alright. Putvin.
Who, sorry?
You.
Me?
Putvin.
Yes.
Bosher.
Yes.
Bauman.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Bent.
Yes.
Rice.
Yes.
Filkins.
Yes.
Host.
Yes.
And then if everyone had a chance to review January 22nd, 2024 meeting minutes, I found no hiccups.
I found one under new business. Rather than Kent voiced his concern of being the vice chair, it should be Fent.
I thought you fixed that.
Yes, remember, but I said I printed them all so that it's fixed. It's just not fixed
Right.
in the printing.
So I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve.
I'll second it. That's all right. I've been called worse today.
Okay. Bauman.
Yes.
Bent.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Filkins.
Yes.
Host.
Yes.
Rice.
Yes.
Bosher.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes. I should have probably announced that we already discussed that, but okay.
It's okay.
All right. No harms, no fouls. This evening, we have public hearing for a possible amendments to section 46-315 of the city's zoning ordinance. Specifically, the Planning Commission will consider amendments regarding variations in design requirements for residential planned unit developments. Having read that, Mr. Wallace?
Yes, in particular, we're looking at an amendment to subsection 9 of that section, which is entitled Variations. And there's very few recommended changes. In the opening sentence of Variations, it says, with the exception of increases in permitted housing density, that short piece would be deleted, which means housing density would now be something the Planning Commission had the chance to vary the requirements for. The Planning Commission may authorize, and then the word any is being inserted before variations, may authorize any variations from the design provisions of this division. And so it's moved from section to division, and by making that word, it's applicable to the entire division of the ordinance, which is the residential planned unit development, RPUD, section of the ordinance. The reason why we're proposing this is we have a number of housing projects that'll probably be coming forward in site plan review in the near future, probably within the next 3 or 4 months. And the one that first really kind of kicked it off was the concept design here for the project that's just north of the City Hall here on Lake Street. Now, this amendment has no direct correlation to doing any kind of approval with this. It just merely opens a pathway where it could be considered. This project involves 2 buildings of 24 units, so 48 apartment units. The parking supplied here is about 1.5 spaces per unit, which is half a space more per unit than what we approved for the Cadillac lofts. And of course, they're also proposing landscaping around the buildings. I think when we get the final site plan, I think the drainage for this project will end up probably being put underground under the parking lot so that they can hold sufficient stormwater for the project. And just looking at the concept, it appeared to me like we were probably going to see some slight conflicts with probably the housing density and perhaps setbacks as well, and also the minimum lot size. There's a minimum housing RPUD size of 5 acres. We set a minimum site size for the MPUD, and from the time we first set that minimum housing size, we were always looking at amendments to that to keep lowering the size. We had to do it for the Lofts project, and I believe there may have been one other one. But in that case, we allowed the Planning Commission to waive that minimum project size by doing a letter. And in this case, we're just kind of shortening the process rather than make them waste a meeting for you to waive the size, which generally, if the project's a good project, the Planning Commission would do. And then we save probably a month, could save some time on that. And the other changes may end up only being a matter of a few feet. It's hard to say. But in terms of waiting for their final design, the ordinance as currently written allows full ability of the Planning Commission to waive any of the design provisions, but only under the design provisions section of the division. This one would expand it to the entire division, which then would allow you to automatically waive the minimum size. And as long as I've been doing PUDs, I've found minimum housing sizes or project sizes to be, as soon as you set them, you get the project that's 0.2 acres below the minimum size, and then and the process to get variances is an extremely tough one, which requires showing hardship or practical difficulty. And a lot of times the project might make perfect sense without needing to demonstrate that. And so my thought is that this would allow us to appropriately act on a number of housing projects that could be coming forward before the Planning Commission. And a lot of discretion is already given to the Planning Commission. In fact, in the mixed-use PUD, the Planning Commission actually has to act on a rezoning, and then also the City Council needs to act on that, so it's a more full review process. The way this ordinance is currently written for our PUDs, they literally can be applied for housing in virtually any house or any zoning district within the city. So there's already a great amount of authority vested in the Planning Commission to consider whether the proposed project is on the right site, and then also does it meet satisfactory design provisions and so forth. We also now currently have a great deal of housing shortage in the community, and in trying to put housing projects together. Every element of cost for the project becomes critical to getting it to a point where the project can actually be initiated. In fact, of the projects that we think are moving forward, which would be Cooley School, Kentucky Street Development, Cadillac Lofts Phase 2, all these projects would not be moving forward without considerable amount of underwriting by other organizations or government entities. I believe Cooley School received just over $2 million in grants for their project. Kentucky, I think, received $500,000. I'm not sure on this project if it has a grant fixed to it, but we'll probably find out when it comes forward for final design. But the point is that it's getting extremely difficult to do a housing project without scrutinizing every element and the cost associated with that element. So given that, and I looked at this design, and given the developments I've seen in other communities in downtown environments, they all tend to be on rather tight parcels. It's just the nature of trying to build density in a limited area in a downtown. I felt that the project was reasonably designed to the point where it should be allowed to be considered for approval. And given that, I thought that this amendment that's being proposed, not only for this project, but for other projects, may in one capacity or maybe other capacities, but sometimes just one capacity, maybe even site size, would need this amendment to be able to move the project through a review process. So if this were to be approved, it would still go through the special use permit process. It would still undergo departmental head review, and then it would also come before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission would also have a say-so in the site design, not just the department heads, and could review the proposed density or parking or other elements and choose to either accept or reject it based on your review of the project. So my recommendation is that the amendment do get recommended for approval to the City Council. And then I think that would set the stage for streamlining a lot of the upcoming projects that we may have. And I think we can take an even deeper dive, keeping in mind that this might only be in effect for maybe 3 to 6 months, and then we'll be having an entirely new section submitted with the new ordinance. And at that point in time, I guess we could take a look at whether we want to do a deeper dive and try to set new standards, or whether we still believe that taking this approach is the right one. But that's all I have on that project.
The guy that was gonna do the castles, is he totally off the plate? No?
No, he's back to looking at sites in the city. I guess he's seen a look at some of the changes in laws or MISTA programming, and I think he's back to evaluating sites. And that quite frankly could be another project that could use this. But it's important to note that there's no direct tie between any project and this. It's just being recommended to deal with any number of projects that may be coming forward.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, sure.
But for this change, how would someone build a project? What steps, if any, are available or required to build a project that would require this change that you're suggesting here or recommending here?
What would we require?
Yeah, a variance, a rezoning. What are the steps that would be required
Well,
to?
A variance likely wouldn't get you where you need to go. I mean, if the ZBA were very loose in how they grant variances, they could do it by variance, but with the history we have with how our board works, I don't think that would be a feasible path. You would literally have to, well, you would have to amend this ordinance in a different manner, or you could change the density standards and setback standards of an individual multifamily district, but then that would affect any kind of standard projects coming in under normal district. So one thing always kind of begets another.
Well, and that's actually my worry on the other side, because there's an expectation that the community sets, the city council sets by adopting an ordinance, right? And setting, in this case, is one example, density standards for residential. You know, that's one of the things that we're proposing to eliminate. So I'm just curious, there must have been, it is well taken, 2 points are well taken. One, that it still leaves the commission with the opportunity to reject plans and projects regardless. And two, that anytime you set a standard, anything a tenth off is bound to be on your desk the next day. All that said, we set the standards for a reason, and that's my concern is, as the chair and I were talking about beforehand, just briefly, that setting a new standard because it's the easier way to go about it. So
I guess my response to that would be that these standards were set, who knows, 30, 40 years ago, at a time when development patterns were different, market conditions were different, housing challenges were different, everything was different. And I think in today's market and struggles I've seen people try to work through, both financially and through the various parties they had to work through to get their projects on board, I think we're just living in a different world, and it requires, different zoning techniques to facilitate that. It's also one of the things that, our RC is looking for us to do, is to figure out how we can streamline needed projects in the community. And I think this is just another case how we can do that with still having some protections in place. There will be several professionals at the department head reviewing it. There will be all of the members of the planning commission reviewing it. And your collective decision decides whether it goes forward or doesn't go forward. I was just at a housing meeting. There was about 20 to 30 people in attendance yesterday, and they were all comparing notes, new legislation, new programs, projects they have, all trying to figure out how do we keep moving housing forward, because it's not just a problem at Cadillac, it's a problem in the entire area. And they've hired a consultant, Progressive Architects and Engineers, to work with Housing North to put together a housing plan that frames some ideas on how we can move forward and what has to be done to approach that whole housing deficiency, especially since there seems to be a general functional problem with, traditionally, this kind of housing was developed strictly through private developers, generally without any assistance of any sort. And then at some point in time, that became too much of a challenge. And now it seems like nonprofits are sometimes leading the way on housing developments, such as Michigan Community Capital did with Cadillac Lofts. So we're moving from housing being constructed by private developers without subsidy to either nonprofits or private entities still, but still needing substantial underwriting assistance from other parties.
That answer yours? Any objections, open public hearing? Good. At this time, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If anyone in our audience wants to come forward and speak in favor of this change or against this change, please come forward. Okay. Seeing no one, we'll go ahead then and close the public hearing, and we'll debate this. Okay.
John, just out of curiosity, what is the acreage of the site down here on Lake Street? Just to put it in perspective.
I would hate to wager, but I want to say it was under 3. I think it's 2 something.
Yeah, we think it's in the neighborhood of 2 acres.
Let me see if I can find it real quick.
We'll see if we can find any info in the file.
Quite a deviation from 5.
You just have to make taller buildings.
Yeah, we'll
So you gotta
be setting a
Yeah.
precedent there.
Because everything that ever comes by us always goes through us, and we have to give variances. But I guess I'm in the same boat or the same mindset. I don't want to give a carte blanche to everybody just to do whatever they want to do. And it may be easier if we do it, but it may also allow for stuff that the people in the areas aren't going to like. And that's my concern. I don't want somebody to build a apartment complex behind my house, even though, just because they got a small lot of land and all of a sudden, bang, they can build something on it. I'm not sure I like this.
John, I'm looking at the existing ordinance, and if you look at C there on the first page, general requirements for residential plan unit development, minimum area. You read that, and then you go, however, an area bounded, so it's got all of these exceptions already. How does what you're proposing there affect that? And I'm struggling to understand exactly the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here by striking that. And a lot of verbiage,
Well-
maybe in a nutshell.
Well,
What are we trying to
the
accomplish?
problem with that statement is that site is not bounded on all sides. So that means the 5 acres has to be there, and the 5 acres is not
Okay,
there.
because it's not bounded and
Right.
It is an interesting question in particular because at some point the exception was included, probably for a specific reason.
Yeah, they probably encountered something in their past which called that to attention, but my point is, now we've encountered more situations that they haven't considered when they wrote this. And I think it's time that we do that. And I was hesitant to, given that this might only be in place for a relatively short period of time, was it worth trying to extend the length of this thing by getting into details on a lot of different areas to get it to everyone's liking, and then turn around and, then we have something new, plus the time that it takes to do that. I have faith in the department heads, I have faith in the planning commission that we can tell when a project's being shoehorned in or whether it's a reasonable looking project for the site that it's proposed on. They always have the option to, if you don't like it, they can go back and they can meet the literal requirements of the 5 acres. You can rely on that anytime you want. You aren't being shut out from using those requirements to reject. It's just an option, if you wish to, that you can vary from those requirements. So every one of the things that's required now, if you want to stand pat on those, you can, or you can choose to go off of those to some degree.
I mean, housing is just a very real issue. And you know, I've spent a lot of time in those same meetings that John was talking about. And, you know, we talked to people over in Frankfurt, Ludington area, and listened to the creative ways that they have made it happen. And, you know, I look at the property on Lake Street, and there's the condos kind of kitty corner to that, right across the street. It's not heavy residential there that, you know, to your point, I don't want somebody to put a high-rise in my backyard. But there, I mean, it's businesses across the street and on the other side of it. You know, the county building is across the street, and then G&D is behind that. And it gives people, when you talk about a walkable community, it gives people the opportunity to maybe live in the downtown area without a vehicle. So,
Right, there aren't a lot of tracts of land left in the city that are 5 acres that you could build on. I mean, if you want to be anywhere near downtown, which a lot of people are going to want to live near downtown, like you said, within walking distance, 5 acres really rules out the majority of our space. You know, when this was written, 5 acres was probably attainable, but today, there's not that much left.
And quite frankly, Gary Pitch and the Veniclaus and Company, just as an example, have been working with the city for probably 4 or 5 months at least to identify that. I mean, with Veniclaus, there was a case of needing to be downtown. They weren't going to entertain the project unless it was downtown. And they worked through, at least 3 or 4 other properties that we sent them lists for in the downtown, which for whatever reason didn't bring any fruition. And I think this was one of the last ones that they were able to work out a deal with anybody to do a project in the downtown. This was brought to us by our MEDC rep, Dan Leonard, who had some consistent contact with the Veniclaus and Company, and was able to entice them to take a look at Cadillac for a project. Their primary use was to do a mixed use. However, because of the areas that they couldn't negotiate a deal, then they veered off of the mixed use in favor of the residential. Danielle was able to look up at the size, and it's 1.26 acres in size.
I didn't think that was no two.
So, once again, trying to really look at what this changes. Look at a practical standpoint here on the Lake Street development. If the wording was left as is, would that site not even be able to be considered for what they're proposing? Or could it be proposed and then have to go through the steps of variances, changing to existing codes, or would it not even be able to be presented because it doesn't?
It would not be able to be considered without another change that would be equal to this change in some other way, creating an entire new district, changing the requirements in another district, adding a certain type of use to another district. Whatever we would consider to move it forward would require as much administrative work as this change. And variances, quite frankly, I would dare say, wouldn't be an option given the training and the decision-making that's in place with our zoning board of appeals, because they would not be able to find a hardship here.
Are there other zones that permit multifamily apartments with lesser, in this example, acreage requirements?
I'm not, our RM1 and RM2 would be the districts we'd look at. I don't know the standards for that offhand. But you would have to then look at them both from a density perspective, from a setback perspective, all the different parameters compared against this project. And we did look at that, and it did not meet the RM1 and RM2 standards outright. So again, have to go for variance, which I don't think would be granted, or we'd have to change the wording to the RM1 and the RM2 district in some fashion.
I fully appreciate the policy concern behind it. I don't know how we get more housing for the amount of money it's costing to build, and you hate to tell anybody they can't build for one reason or another. My biggest fear is trading what is a zoned community for just exception after exception. And if 8 people can decide on a project-to-project basis what is the standard, to me that goes against what having a set of rules is for. Maybe that's how it should be, but that's my struggle, that I don't, when our standard then is lesser, then maybe hardship is too high. But if our standard is, well, we like the picture you put in front of us, but somebody else doesn't get approved, it starts to feel like you either knew the right people or you had the right thing. And
Well-
hard and fast rules are much easier to follow.
Yeah, on top of that, to piggyback on top of that, they also, commissions and boards change. Codes and ordinances can change, but they're set in place for an extended period of time until reasonable change is needed. It's a tough one.
Well, I look at the plan, and this is not unlike what I see in other downtowns being built all the time. I don't see anything substandard. Are there some that are built with more amenities? Sure, in your higher affluent communities, but communities like Cadillac, I see projects of this density in cities of our town built in many places. I just worry, the other thing you'll hear from every developer is, sometimes the length of time going through approval can kill a project. That happened right here in town with the Speeds project. We had that whole building all set to go into apartment units, and if the MEDC had hit the right timing on the offer that they had made to them, it would all be apartments today. Because of a 6-month delay, now it's not that. We lost all those apartments because of a 6-month delay. So any kind of delay in the process can sometimes mean you lose the project. I'm not saying every case, but we had one real example where that actually happened.
State level economic development bureaucracy is not the same as city bureaucracy. I mean, I bristle at that enforcing the rules as they are is somehow the same as what happened there.
I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. I'm saying I believe right now our rules are outdated and not proper. If we were writing this today, we would not write that ordinance. I wouldn't recommend writing that ordinance. And so what is a way to work in a positive light, knowing that this is a temporary situation? Do we really distrust the people on this board are going to change out within 3 months? Do we really, do we not have faith in ourselves? You got to answer that question. We can set a timeline on this. We can say we'll approve this for, and we'll want to have it come back for revision within X amount of months. If we don't have the whole new ordinance adopted, that would be fine.
One of the things that wrestle with also, and I think maybe all of us here, the continued growth of Cadillac. You know, the continued growth, you know, I see it in my industry, the attracting developers. You know, one of the first questions you get asked is, you know, how's the city government to work with? How, you know, how are we seeing growth here? Are they, you know, and so the struggle becomes of looking at what we have and what we've had in place. Is it outdated? Is it not? How does you know, how does the neighboring public respond? Do we make a change to continue to grow forward, to continue our growth? All of those things, and I think everybody here says we don't want to stall our growth in our city that we have, but also need to make sure when we make a decision that when it applies moving forward, doesn't open things up wide open to whatever somebody wants to come along and throw at it, which all needs approval, but, so, that's where I'm struggling with.
And I do respect everything that's been said here this evening, but I just can't stress enough the need for housing and the fact that these developers chose to look at Cadillac. And some communities are not that fortunate. They're struggling with housing, but they can't find developers. And so I don't know what the right answer is, but I think that we're fortunate in that we have these projects going on around the community to provide more housing for, you know, all walks of life, which is needed.
You know, as John said, though, you have to place a lot of faith in the people on this board too. We can't be afraid of change. You know, if this city's gonna grow, we can't, like John said, drag our feet and not let things happen. This is a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Either we approve this and move forward, or we don't approve it and do variances to move forward, or we make people shy away from our town. So the question is, which way are we gonna go? Are we gonna trust the people here, or are we gonna trust a set of rules? That's kind of what it boils down to me. One or the other is gonna be the bounce factor. It's either gonna be us, or it's gonna be a set of rules. I mean, John's telling us he's willing to open this up so that more of the decision is on us, so that we can react faster, or we leave hard and fast rules in place. To me, this is an old rule that we're not gonna be able to live within. Things have changed. Our town has changed. I think we need flexibility here. And we're here to make those kind of decisions. That's our job.
So, John, I have a question in regards to the new zoning ordinance that you're working on. You know, so specific, let's just talk specific to this issue. Have you been working on what that's going to look like in the new proposed zoning ordinance?
Yeah, basically in two ways. I think this parcel, if I'm not mistaken, would be in a new downtown zoning district, which would have new requirements for setbacks, height, and all of that. And then there will be another section that rewrites this section. But much like our MPUD, which has design standards and so forth, we're looking at putting in some design standards for the RPUD in the new ordinance. But, you know, I just looked at the time needed to work through those as possibly being, you know, being problematic in this particular development.
Excuse me. To the extent there's interest, and to John's point, and the the interest to not stand in the way, but not assume that we're going to have a new zoning ordinance, and in my opinion, not gut the existence of zoning, which is important and doesn't just get replaced by whoever 7 or 8 people are here. I could be supportive of, depending upon what legal counsel tells us is an effective writing, perhaps something at the beginning of your language after variations to say until October 1st, 2024. That's just to pretend we can change it to whatever. October 1st, 2024, comma, the Planning Commission may. That would give community development time to finish the zoning, also meet at least my concern that we not gut the rules, but give some opportunity for movement forward.
Mallory, do you want to weigh in on whether they could put a time limitation in this amendment?
Yeah, that's definitely something that could be added in. Whatever date you pick, you can have it. We can rewrite it to say, until X date, or alternatively, you could have it be until amended, with the anticipation that it will be amended again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My concern, even in my idea, is you wouldn't want to, assuming we don't have a new zoning ordinance, you wouldn't want to not be able to at least do the variances that are allowed now. So we'd need to find some way to make this change for a period of time and at least be able to fall back on the existing language after that time.
Right.
I appreciate that suggestion. It's just, I'm sitting here thinking there's got to be a way for us to collectively not throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So to keep moving us forward, but everybody be comfortable with the way that we do it.
I think if you want to pursue that path, I think all that would be required would be to enter a date in there.
Yeah, my concern to legal counsel might, to my follow-up issue of, would you want to have essentially two paragraphs of variations? Until October 1 of 2024, this language as proposed, if no new zoning ordinance is adopted after October 1, it would revert back to this language. That's a policy change I would like to see happen.
Yeah, that's good.
That way
Good
we're
idea.
covered both ways.
But I want to make sure it's done correctly so
There.
we don't lose
We're not
even
left
this
open.
chance to make this variation.
There.
What's the goal for the new zoning ordinance overhaul?
Well, right now, we have the ordinance is completely written in draft form. It's in legal review, and we're also doing a final read-through for any final edits. We've had a changeover in zoning administrators, and right now we also have Abigail Pluger reviewing the new ordinance, and she had several months to work with the existing ordinance. And so we're having her look at the new ordinance and see if any of the issues she encountered with the old ordinance she thinks are properly fixed in the new ordinance, and offering suggestions. So we're just doing some final editing and waiting for legal review.
So, medium case scenario, October 1, November 1,
We're
July 1.
Yeah, I think either July or August should be safe.
Why don't we give you October?
Exactly. Let's go further out.
If not December or January.
Yeah.
November.
John, are
There we
these
go. I like
issues specifically addressed in those changes?
Say that again.
Are the issues that we're facing tonight
We're just kind of
addressed
blindly.
differently in the new?
This might all be.
Yes, they are. They are dealt with differently.
Go from 5 acres to
Again,
3.8.
I always hesitate setting the minimum size, because every time I seem to have done it in the past, I've regretted the size that I've set.
Right, right, it's a pretty fluid,
Because you could have two relatively tight parcels together where two people are trying to harmonize a building that touches each other, and you might have to adjust something a foot or two, and if it doesn't allow it, then you're in trouble. And they might only be occupying a half acre or an acre, so it gets really hard to set a minimum size. And it wouldn't be a problem if there was a lot more flexibility in the variance proceedings, but the way the state statute has set it up is a very rigid process, and there's very few things that justify going for the variance, and that's why having some flexibility in the PUD process is so important, is because the variance proceeding is so rigid. Otherwise, that might be a satisfactory way to do it, but it's not, so.
Well, I have an idea, but it's got a lot of words.
I'm
You get paid
surprised.
I used to get paid by the word, so.
Somebody can second it, as long as you can say it.
Well, and perhaps Mallory should hear it first. Legal counsel should hear it first before, and obviously the commission. So my proposal, until November 1, 2024, comma, the planning commission may authorize any variation from the design provisions of this division, comma, and after November 1, 2024, the planning commission may authorize any variation from the design provisions of this section, comma, neither of which, well, yeah, neither of which will not be incompatible. I'm good until we get into triple negatives.
is it either of which?
Yes, yes, I think.
That's not a double negative.
No, but it, yeah, so whichever one is effective
Yeah, it
shall not be.
includes both, which is what we want, right?
Right. Right. I think you're right. Thoughts?
Mallory, do you
Mallory?
have
Mallory, did you get that, or do you need him to restate it?
I think I got it. So I was originally thinking it would be something like until X date, new language, second paragraph after X date,
Yeah.
and then just copy and paste the current language
Yes.
in. I think that might be the easiest way to do it.
It is, but it's a lot more words, Mallory.
Okay.
Yes, that's the easier way to go.
She gets paid by the word still, though.
You're right.
what's a quarter of a page, right?
Right.
Yeah, so, but either way, as long as, I think you definitely want to make sure that it happens automatically so that you don't have to, go through the amendment process again if you choose not to
Yes,
do any amendments. You want it to just automatically revert to the current version.
I agree. If a motion would be appropriate, Mr. Chair. I would move that the proposed, oh, yes, sorry, excuse me.
So, just because I'm not sharp, what exactly are we going to vote on? What we're going to vote on is whether your new provision or your new requirements for residential plan unit developments that you're developing right now, and we're going to allow you to use that.
We're acting on just what was proposed here tonight until a certain date, and then my understanding is revert back after a certain date.
It's just a temporary change until that time comes.
Okay.
Or be overruled if we adopt a new zoning ordinance.
There. Okay, I'm good with that.
Oh, so my motion would be to, as legal counsel proposed, essentially the paragraph as proposed by staff with the addition of November 1, 2024 at the beginning of that paragraph, such that that revised language applies until November 1 of 2024. And another should be in your packet there.
It's not.
Here, you can look at mine.
What are you looking for?
That's the ordinance that you're looking at. You should have a packet that has an agenda on the front.
Back this way? Okay.
There we
My
go.
apologies.
We found it.
Yeah.
So that proposed language with November 1 of 2024 before it, such that that revised language would apply through November 1 of 2024, and then essentially the existing language as a new or extended paragraph after November 1, 2024, the Planning Commission may authorize essentially the language that is in the ordinance now. Is that specific enough?
Mallory?
Yes.
Perfect.
Support.
Roll, please.
Yes. All right.
Everybody good?
First.
Kevin?
Bent.
What I tell you?
Yeah.
I'm good, yes.
Okay.
Rice.
Yes.
Bauman.
Yes.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Host.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes.
Bosher.
Yes.
And just side note, Mallory, you were able to get that verbiage correct, so you can.
If someone could send me a copy, that would be great to make sure that I have it as you have it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. New business, nothing. Old business, nothing. Board member comments. I'll be quiet tonight because Joe's done a good job, but,
Thanks, Woody.
I'm
All right.
picking on
You get my work when we.
I know, all right.
I do have another question for John, I believe. So, with this change here, if this Lake Street formally comes forward to the Planning Commission, process would be public hearing.
Yeah.
Explain the process, what that would look like if this formally came forward
Well, if
to
it
the,
came,
to the Planning Commission.
if it came forward, it would come as a residential planned unit development, and residential planned unit developments come to the Planning Commission as a special use permit. All special use permits require a public hearing. We would send out notice 15 days ahead of the public hearing. We would hold the public hearing, and then the Planning Commission could take action. We would probably obtain department head review and engineering review prior to you acting on it, so you had the benefit of the engineer's expertise and all the department heads to know if there were any access issues or anything, drainage issues or anything. You'd have knowledge of all that being reviewed before you have to act on it. And then following the public hearing, you would be able to approve it, and then it's approved. And that's the end of the process.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on board have anything to say yet? Comments? No? Okay. Communications, annual report. So that's in the back of everyone's packet. Starting with the picture of the lake and the pickleball courts, I guess. Okay, so having done that, you running with this, Mr. Wallace?
What, on the annual report? It's just a.
I mean, our
it's just-
communications, I figure that's what that is, right? Annual report, yes, sir?
Yeah, it's just a requirement. Is it for RRC? For
And
RRC,
it's in our laws as well, planning commission.
the bylaws. And it's required by our bylaws and the RRC program to provide the annual report. It's just a summary of actions, key actions that the planning commission has taken during the year. And those would be posted on our website as well.
Danielle, one correction to spelling on my name.
On
2
the-
G's, not 3.
It's got 7 G's and 4 S's.
Nice.
What? Oh my. Thus, once again, David, that's why I threw that ball in your court.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on, I guess, our?
Do we have to adopt it
annual
at all,
report?
John? Or Danielle? Okay.
Nope, it's just communication.
Just information. Okay.
Routine business, if you will.
Everybody good with all that? Any public comments? You're up. Yes, young lady.
Would you like me to identify myself? Is that how this works? Perfect.
Yes, please.
My name is Cindy Tomaszewski. I am the board president for the HOA for the condominium on the corner of Lake Street. And I just have a point of clarification. The vote that you just took a few moments ago was, what you actually did was you voted on draft language for a proposed amendment, which you will then forward to the city council to approve. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure because
Yeah.
the little old ladies in the building are going to ask me, and I want to make sure I can explain to them what you did. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for coming tonight. In my own mind, I was wondering what they would have to say if this happened.
Well, they may have plenty to say in the future.
Understand.
It's hard to tell.
Understand?
But I'm just the information sharer at this point.
Well, perfect.
Cindy, could you sign in for us, please?
Oh, on this piece of
Yes,
paper?
thank you.
Will do. Thank you. Do you want me to use the condo address or my home residential address?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay, I will put the condo office address. Thank you.
That works.
Cindy, you can let them know that none of us take this lightly, as you can.
I
tell.
can tell. Yes, I do. Thank you.
We have a lot of forward-looking people,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people that want to make sure that this is done right.
Mhm.
Those would be the people who would be directly impacted by that.
Cindy, in the
development.
day, a guy named Leo owned that. Is he still on the earth?
Leo just passed away about a month ago. I have to look up my email, my work email address. I'll finish it. I'm going to look it up on my phone. Thanks. Yeah, he just passed away. I think it was about a month ago.
Okay. Thank you for that.
That's Leo. Yeah.
Any other public comment? No. Good. No other business and nobody
to adjourn.
cares. Are we? Oh.